So you will decide when
Okay,
to begin,
I'll
right?
start at exactly 11.
Okay, you will decide when to begin. For now, I'm off.
Yeah. Yes, no problem. Okay. Good morning, students. I hope you're all well. We are about to start. As you know, we have been looking at this topic of transport. Transport in plants. We began with transport in plants, but in most cases, we've been moving slowly because many people keep on referring us back. We didn't understand that, but probably today may move a little bit faster. After transporting plants, we are supposed to go transporting animals. Okay. Then after that, I'll get suggestions from you of the topics which you may want me to. Let me see. We are left with 1 minute and then we start so far from last week's work. I think there is nothing like any question so far. We are left with about 1 minute. We're starting at exactly 11. At exactly 11, we are going to be starting. And you should be following very, very keenly. Okay. Okay. I think it is time. I can start now. Now, last time, of course, when we began with transport, first of all, there were three main aims of this topic. One was looking at uptake of water and mineral salts from the soil. Now, secondly, it was about uh, movement of water into the vascular system. That is, in this case, we are looking at the xylem. And then thirdly, we shall look at the ascent or movement of water up the stem, because first it came from the soil to enter the root system. Then when it has entered, then we looked at the second bullet of how water enters now the vascular system. Now today we are looking at the third one of movement of water up the stem after water has crossed from the endodermis to enter. Actually, for some of you have forgotten, this was it. One was about how water is going to move from soil water solution to enter this epidermal cell, then through the cortical cells, and then it reaches here, the endodermis. Then secondly, we looked at how water is going to move from this side of the endodermis to enter the vascular system here, that is in the xylem. Now today we are going to look at how this water is actually moving up the plant. How is it moving up the stem? And we are basically going to look at some forces that are involved. Okay. Now I want you, when we are discussing these things, if you want to understand them well, rather than just cramming things which you don't understand, one thing for sure you must know is this arrangement, the structural arrangement of, let's say, the transverse section through the stem, through the root, as well as the stem. And this is the kind of plan. Okay. Now today we are looking at how this water is going to be moving up the plant. But you can't understand this well unless there are some forces which you've understood. And you can see the structure here. It is actually looking at things which are inside this plant. Let me call this 1, and then let me call this 2. Okay. Now in 1, you are looking at a plant, just roots, stem, and leaves. But in 2, you are looking at the cells involved inside this plant in 1. Okay. Now you can see this arrow showing that water is moving up. But now this xylem does not stop here. It goes on and on. Okay. So this xylem goes on and on, up it even goes to the midrib of the leaf and to the veins, okay? And what you are seeing here, these are mesophyll cells. These cells are surroundings, like these cells surrounding these veins within the leaf. It's actually what you are seeing here. So I don't want people to say that, this thing is complicated. It is something simple. This part here is signifying the transverse section through the leaf. This one here, it is actually what is inside here. So these cells are surrounding this xylem, but within the leaf also. And remember, the leaves normally have stomata on the lower side, so they can lose water via the stomata. Even sometimes on the upper side, there may be few stomata, okay? And these are the ones in this case. So when water is lost to the atmosphere, these cells lose water also, the mesophyll cells, so they become hypertonic, okay? Someone is saying my profile pic is obstructing. I am sharing my screen. I hope every one of you is able to see what is on my screen. Just minimize it. Just like here, are you seeing what is on my screen? If I am to make this like this, these things are going to be obstructing me, okay? But what I've done is I have minimized it. There is that option of minimizing. You minimize and then you put it some corner. It will not be disturbing you. I hope you have rectified it. Just minimize it. I hope Amuza Samuel, you've understood. You minimize. So I think we can continue. Now, effective evaporation of water from the leaf surface, as I've been saying. So when water is lost from the leaf surface, causes a transpirational pull, pulling water up the stem. Now, water moves through the xylem vessels or the tracheids. Now, remember, the xylem is comprised of two major water conducting tissues. That is the xylem vessel and the tracheids. So actually, even if you just call them just xylem, but there are two types of tissues, xylem vessel and tracheids. Now, the xylem vessel are narrow and high adhesive forces, the hubs between the water molecules and the lignified walls of the xylem. Now, this is what I'm explaining here, that when water is lost from these mesophyll cells via the stomata like this, these mesophyll cells become hypertonic, meaning that the sap concentration here becomes concentrated more than the cells here in the xylem. So what actually happens is that water, because these cells are hypertonic, that is the cells in the xylem. So water moves from the xylem, it enters like that. Now the adhesive forces. Now adhesive forces, those are the forces between the water molecules. I'm assuming this is the water molecule. Okay, like that. Now these water molecules and the walls of the xylem. Now, if you want to understand how water molecules, adhesive forces strong are, picture a glass here and then you pour it out. Normally, there are some droplets of water which stay on glass, those droplets of water sticking onto glass. Now, the reason as why these droplets of water are not falling back to the glass is there is a force between the water molecule itself and the wall of the glass, which we call the adhesive forces. Okay. Now, that adhesive force is the one which prevents the water from dropping back. Even here in the xylem, those forces exist. Now, the second force is the cohesive force. Now, cohesive force, that is the force of attraction between the water molecules themselves. Like you have a water droplet here, it can easily stick to another water droplet and another water droplet. So what prevents this water from breaking up those are the forces in between them. So I hope that is clear. Now the adhesive force is increased when now the effective evaporation is specific of the mesophyll cells of the leaves. Now this of water to move out of the system is that that cell has a low water potential. That means water can't just move out of it. Okay, a cell which has a lot of water in it and less concentrated, it means that it has a high water potential. Now, when water has been left, when water leaves actually via the stomata, it makes these cells to be more concentrated in, and therefore they have a low water potential. Now, when they have a low water potential, water moves from the xylem to enter them, okay, so that it can create a high water potential. Now, that way, that's what we call a transpirational pull that pulls the water together with the other forces. Okay. Mildred is saying that, pardon. Okay, let me repeat for Mildred. In summary, these are the forces involved. Okay. Okay, the forces, about the forces. This is what I said, that when water is moving up, let me first get a duster and I rub this off. Okay, duster, where are you? Let me first remove these off so that you can get clearly what I mean. Okay. Now let me get my pen. Okay, this is what I said, that water, the first segment was water moving from the cell to enter the root. Now water has entered the root. It has now a challenge of coming from the root itself to enter the xylem. That was a segment which we looked at last time. Now the third one is what we are looking at today, movement of water up the xylem. Okay, and we are saying that for water to move up the xylem, there are forces which we call the transpirational pull. From transpiration, the transpiration pull. And how or what affects the transpirational pull, okay, is that because with transpiration is a loss of water molecules from the leaf surface to the atmosphere. Okay, now when water has been lost from the leaf surface via the stomata, it means that that water is coming from these surrounding mesophyll cells that have those minute pores that open to the atmosphere. Now, there's a word which we normally use, water potential. Now, when water has been lost to the atmosphere by transpiration, these cells become more concentrated. The sap becomes more concentrated. And when, please mute. Okay, I was still telling you that, sorry for that. I was still telling you that once water has been lost as water vapor via the stomata to the atmosphere, these cells here, their cells have become more concentrated because they have lost some water, okay, to the atmosphere. Now, when they become more concentrated, it means that they have a low water potential, because water potential is the tendency of water to move out of the system. Now, when they have little water in them, that means they are more concentrated. It means they have a low water potential. Okay. Now, because they are surrounding the xylem tissue, so water is forced to move from the xylem to enter them, because in the xylem, water always has a high water potential. So it will remove from the xylem where it is at a high water potential to enter these cells that have a low water potential. Okay. And when these cells gain water and the stomata open, they can lose more. Okay. And then again, water is going to come to, from the xylem to replace this. Okay. Another one, this force is due to transpiration, facilitates the transpirational pull. The first force that facilitates the transpirational pull is the adhesive force. That is the force between the wall of the xylem and the water molecules themselves. And I used an example of water in a glass. Like if you put water in a glass and you pour that water, there are some droplets that stay stuck on the glass walls and they are not falling back. The reason that is holding, the force that is holding this drop of water on glass and on the wall of glass minus falling back down is the adhesive force. And that force also exists in the xylem. That is the force between the wall of the xylem and the water molecule itself. It prevents water from falling back. Okay. Then another force is the cohesive force. That is the force between the water molecules themselves within the xylem. That's a water molecule. Now that's the cohesive force is that force in between the water molecules themselves. So they prevent this column of water from breaking, because if it breaks, you can imagine if you are sipping a soda in a straw and then there is a droplet, some soda stops here and then there's space and some soda is here, like how would you be sipping even? At one time you sip and then there's air that you are sipping. So it wouldn't make sense. So that force, cohesive force, prevents this water from breaking, the column of water from breaking. Now, when you combine the cohesive force, adhesive force, and the transpirational pull, okay, this transpirational pull aids the upward movement of water from the roots up to the leaves. I hope that is very clear. And these are the words which I've just summarized in this explanation. That effective evaporation of water from the leaf surface causes the transpirational pull. That is what I've just said, which pulls water up to the stem. The transpirational pull, that results from water loss across the leaf surface. Now the water moves through the xylem vessels, okay, or tracheids. Now xylem vessels and tracheids, they literally mean, okay, they're not the same, but they're all the xylem, because the xylem is made up of two water conducting tissues, that is the xylem vessel and the tracheids. They all conduct water. Now the xylem vessel are narrow. Now this narrowness of the xylem vessel also contributes to another force which we call capillarity. Capillarity. I'll talk about capillarity a bit later. So does osmosis work there? Yes, osmosis works here also, because it is the one that brings about water moving from the xylem vessel to enter the mesophyll cells. They enter by a process called osmosis. Thank you for that question. And then the adhesive force is increased when water evaporates from the leaf surface. The moment water is lost from the leaf surface, also there's a force. These forces also increase. Now the effective evaporation is specifically from the surface of the cellulose cell wall of the mesophylls of the leaves. Now this lowers the water potential at the mesophyll cells than the surrounding cells, and more water is drawn into the mesophyll cells by osmosis. That is from the xylem here. I hope that is very clear. Also, the mesophyll cells have those powers. Now, these are just summaries which I've just talked about. They have powers which we call the stomata. The powers are, this is minute. Minute means something very small, because you actually can't see the stomata using your naked eye. You need to use a microscope to see the stomata. I don't know whether there is anyone of you who has ever seen stomata using your naked eyes. You can't. We normally use a microscope. And I hope you've done those practicals in school before. And then the high cohesive forces between the water molecules. I talked of the cohesive forces. Those are the forces in between the water molecules themselves. Okay. Now the high cohesive forces between the water molecules which flow in the xylem vessel and the tracheids of leaves and stem prevents the column of water from breaking up. I've just said this already. This also aids upward transport of water in the xylem. So in summary, the forces which are going to be involved, majorly it is the transpirational pull, which is once water is lost by transpiration, sorry for that. Once water is lost by transpiration, it makes these cells surrounding the xylem to have a low water potential. So water moves from the xylem to enter these mesophyll cells by osmosis. And some other, coupled with some other forces, adhesive forces, those are forces in between the cell wall and the water themselves, as well as the cohesive forces. All those forces bring about water moving up the plant. I hope that is very clear. So this is what I've just said, the transpirational pull, adhesive and cohesive forces are passive processes. What do I mean by passive process? Now with the passive processes, here within the xylem, there is no use of energy for water to move up the plant. There is nothing like use of energy. Like everything just flows passively without using energy up as it is being sanctioned up by the transpirational stream. That's what we mean. And then Joel says, good morning, sir. This is my first time of attending this lesson. How can I get these notes? Now, these notes, I shared them one time, and I think I'm going to share them again in the Google Classroom today. Them. Thank you for that, Brian. So I was still telling you that passive process means that there's no use of energy. The energy which we normally talk about at A level is energy in form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. I don't know whether you've done a topic called chemicals of life. If you have done a topic called chemicals of life, you must be knowing something called ATP and even its structure. Now, this ATP is the energy currency in all living organisms. Like for everything to be done, you need money. Is there anything that you can do without money? For everything to be done, you need money. For you to be able to attend this lesson, you need money to buy data. You see that? So that is the ATP. Now, here, when you talk of a passive process, water does not need energy to move up. No, it's a passive process within. So those ones, the passive process which assists mass flow of water up the stem, while root pressure is an active process which equally aids ascent of water. Now, last time I talked of the root pressure, and for some of you have forgotten, I said root pressure has nothing to do with the transpiration. No, the root pressure is as a result of what we call a Casparian strip in it. The endodermis has a Casparian strip in it, so water entering via the apoplast pathway, when it reaches here and it can't continue, it instead moves via the simplest pathway. And sometimes also these endodermal cells have an effect of actively secreting ions into the xylem, making this solution here to have a low water potential, to be more concentrated. Now that pushes water to move via the simplest pathway to enter the xylem that last time. Now, in summary, root pressure versus the transpirational pull. Now, root pressure is the osmotic pressure developing in the root cells due to the movement of water from the soil to the root cells via osmosis. But with the transpirational pull, you are having the force developing in the top of the plant, that is at the leaf surface, due to evaporation of water through the evaporation pool is because of what is happening at the leaf surface, but with the root pressure, it is because of what is happening in the roots as water is being absorbed from the soil, but majorly being affected what is happening at the endodermis. If you still remember the structure of the transverse section of the root. Now, another thing is that with the root pressure, the movement of water from soil solution to root hairs, but then with the transpiration, evaporation of water from the surface of cells in the leaves. You can see that difference. Then about distribution to the ascent of sap, root pressure is partially responsible, just partially, but the movement of water up the plant is mainly or majorly due to transpiration of pool. It is the major contributor. As water is lost from the leaf surface, there are forces involved like adhesion, cohesion, and osmosis making the water to move up the plant. Kevin, Kevin Tumwine, you have a question.
Sir, I'm asking, what you mean transpiration pool controls most of the movement of water up the plant?
That is very true.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you
for that. Thank you for that question. And then, okay, and then root pressure is highest in the morning before the stomata even open. Like if you want to experience root pressure yourself, some of you guys stay in bushes. Okay, not in the bush, don't stay in the bush, but you stay next to a bush. A bush means a chisco. Now you go to those small herbaceous plants like tomatoes, like dodo. Dodo is called pigweed in English, or you can call it amaranthus, as we commonly call it in biology, amaranthus. That is the dodo, or those small, or Galinsoga parviflora, that plant called kafumbe. Galinsoga parviflora. You go to that plant in the morning, get a razor blade and cut middle of the stem. You're going to see that there are some sap that exudes out. Like there are some fluids which were moving up. So after cutting off the shoot, there's some fluid which exudes out. Exuding means bifulumayo, they move out, like they come out, and then you are able to see them. That is how you'll experience the root pressure. But for the case of transpiration of pool, it's not easy to get it unless, okay, you can actually see that transpiration occurs when maybe you get a polythene bag tied around leaves. Okay, after some time you'll see water droplets. If you leave it for some time, water droplets on the what? On the polythene bag. That's how you'll be able to see both. And this is what I've just been saying, that movement of the sap up the plant is passive. Okay, so passive ascent up xylem of stem in the transpiration stream. So it doesn't need energy. The process is just passive. Okay, and for some of you have forgotten, you should have this at the back of your mind. That is the tissue plan of the transverse section of the root, whereby from the epidermis you go to the cortex, then to the endodermis, pericycle, and then to the xylem. That is how they always flow. If you have been understanding, we have some small quiz for you here. And the first question here says, xylem transport of water in tall trees appears to be mainly due to. You can either type, each one of you can type your question in the chat box here. I'll be able to read your answer. Each one of you can type your answer there. And whether it is A, B, C, or D, or you can raise your hand. Here it says D, some D, numbers, or Daphne says D. There's some guy who calls himself Muslim. Okay, let me mute you. Okay, thank you. So so Amuza says D, Asimwe says D. So I think you guys are correct. Because xylem transport of water in tall trees appears mainly due to, that is, transpirational pull and cohesion of water molecules. That is very correct. Metabolic activity, no, remember the thing is even passive. That means it doesn't need energy. And metabolic activities bring about production of energy. Root pressure, no, it's not the main, it is partially contributing. Capillarity means the force that is generated in narrow tubes or pipes. Yes, the xylem is narrow and there's some capillarity force, but it's not the major contributor. So the answer is D. Thank you for that. Then question 2. Question 2 says, which of the following, this guy called Muslim, please mute. Which of the following physical forces are supposed to be responsible for ascent of sap? Is supposed to be sap. Yes, what do you think is the answer? Which of the following physical forces are supposed to be? Yes, Hilary? Hilary, you can say the answer. You unmute and then you say the answer.
I think it is C.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. Hilary says it is C, that is transpirational pull and cohesion. Yes, this is actually correct. Imbibition. Imbibition is, if you have done growth and development, even in O level, remember that normally bean seeds, okay, they imbibe water, that is, they take in water. Capillary force, I've already talked about it, pressure. About it. Yes, people in Sobuga is saying D. Okay. Root pressure. Wait. What is SAP? Asimu is saying, what is SAP? Okay. Now, Asimu SAP is like, if you understand Luganda, it could, I can call it supu, but I don't want to call it supu. Supu meaning sauce, like okay, I was still telling you that that SAP in a cell has SAP, that is like the solutions within the cell. That's what we mean by SAP. I hope you've understood it. Then to saying what fluid that comes out of the plant when you happen to cut it. White fluid. I think you meant to what fluid that comes out of the plant when you happen to cut it. Yeah, yeah, that fluid. You can also call it sap because it
Sir, what's the problem? I can't get you clearly. What? The network, I can't hear you. I can't even view the pics.
I don't really understand what you're trying to say.
The Mazunda family has two.
So Friday is saying that you're saying that you're not getting anything at all. And you elaborate more on what you mean? I was still reading Friday's comment, and Friday wasn't anything at all. Friday, can you please unmute and you comment about
Sir, I just meant like the network.
what do you mean
is
by
quite
you are not
disturbing.
getting anything at all?
The network was disturbing. I was not getting your voice.
Where is Friday?
I'm here, sir. I wasn't getting your voice.
Oh, but are you getting me now? Okay,
Yeah, I'm
but
already
can you
getting
get
you.
it now? Okay.
Okay, I can get you.
Okay.
Ah,
Okay, I think it is raining in many parts here within Central, and I think that is what is causing the network instability. It is raining in some parts, that's why the network continue. Here it says B. That is number 3, cohesion. Transpiration pool theory operates only in It says in passive water absorption. What about the rest? What do you think is the answer? Even Okwalinga Gio says B. Abe says pressure. So is B, some B. Okay, thank you for that. I think yes, I says B. That is true. And then maybe talk about what Abe has said. I don't know whether Abe you are. Okay, sorry for that. For that. So I was still telling you, Abe, that if you want to understand root pressure, you need to understand the transverse section of the root of the dicot stem of the dicot root. There you'll be able to understand. Namakula says you cannot hear. You can't hear. I don't know why people are saying that you can't hear, but I'm seeing my audio is very active here, and I think people can hear me. I think sometimes because of the network, you just have to get a better spot of the network. For now, we can look at the evidence of root pressure. Now, if the stem of a plant is transversely, transverse means you are cutting from left going to right or right to left across. So the cut end of the stump will exude, it will exude like what you are seeing here. Okay, just get any herbaceous plant and cut like that. You see some fluid coming out. Now that fluid that comes out is because of the root pressure, and the lower water potential in the epidermal cell is causing water to move in them by osmosis. Now, when this water reaches the endodermis, the Casparian strip prevents water from moving along the cellulose cell walls, that is the apoplast pathway, and the flow of water is diverted via the symplast. This is M. Now this creates root pressure. Please don't forget the transverse section. For some of you are not here in the first lesson. When you look at the transverse section through the root of a dicot, it has an epidermis. And then it has the cortex, which I can't draw because I'm drawing a tissue plan. Then it has an endodermis. It has a pericycle. And then the star-shaped xylem. This is what I mean. And normally the phloem is on the side, like that. Okay. Now, when you get and cut out this part, when you cut out this samosa here, this is what you must know in order to understand root pressure. Now, root pressure is created when you reach the endodermis. These endodermis have a Casparian strip. The water moving via the apoplast pathway does not enter the xylem. I don't want to over-repeat myself. That is what creates the root pressure as water moves up. Okay. And then I think you've woken up one day in the morning and you've met when the grass is so wet. Okay. Or when you
every day.
Yes. Someone has a question? Okay. So you met when sometimes the grass is wet. Now the endodermis is believed to secrete salts into the vascular tissue. Now this creates relatively low water potential in the vascular tissue, resulting in water being drawn into the osmosis by causing the root pressure. Now, is there any one of you who does not remember the structure of the transverse section of the root? If you don't remember, raise your hand so that I can show you again. Is there anyone? Okay, Hilary, Kevin says they don't remember. Okay, let me show you very, very fast in just a moment.